At 10 minutes past 1 in the morning, Universal Time, on July 30th, 594 Bitcoin walked out of roughly 500 wallets in under half an hour. $38 million. And these were not exchange accounts. These were hardware wallets. The little devices you were told were the gold standard, the paranoid option, the thing responsible people buy precisely so this can never happen. Almost nobody is explaining how it actually happened. I read the technical postmortem and the maker's own advisory, all of it. And there are two details buried in there that changed the whole story. First, the thief skipped every wallet holding less than 0.15 Bitcoin. He set a minimum balance. Let that sink in. Second, and this is the one to hold on to, the wallets that survived had one thing in common. One thing. It costs about $3 at any drugstore, and before this video is over, I'll show you exactly what it is. Because here's where this is going. The financial press spent the weekend telling you this hack proves you can't be trusted to hold your own Bitcoin. That the safe move is to hand your coins to Wall Street and hold a fund instead. And by the time we're done, you're going to see that they're selling you the exact same weakness. Same disease, nicer logo. The morning this broke, the first thing I did was check the live Bitcoin price on the one screen I actually trust for it. And I'll tell you about that screen in a few minutes, because it belongs in this story. Let's walk through what happened, calmly and in order, because the order is everything. March of 2021, the maker of the Coldcard wallet, a company called Coinkite, one of the most respected names in Bitcoin, ships a new version of its software, version 4.0 for their Mark III device, and inside that update is one wrong setting. Not a hacker, not a backdoor, a build setting. Think of it as one line in the recipe that assembles the software, that quietly told the device to skip its own hardware randomness chip. Why does that matter? Stay with me, because this is the whole story. When you set up a Bitcoin wallet, it hands you a list of words, 12 or 24 of them, called a seed phrase. Those words are your money. Anyone who has them has your Bitcoin. And those words are supposed to come from a truly random number, so enormous that guessing it is beyond every computer on Earth. 256 bits of randomness, more possible combinations than there are atoms in the known universe. That's the moat. That is the entire security of Bitcoin self-custody. Nobody can guess your number. But with the randomness chip switched off, the Coldcard fell back on the only random things it could find, its own factory serial number and the reading on its internal clock. Here's the problem. Neither of those is a secret. The serial number is stamped in at the factory. The clock is a clock. So instead of a number no one could ever guess, these devices were cutting keys from public information, like a locksmith cutting your house key from your street address and the time of day you moved in. The effective randomness collapsed from 256 bits to roughly 40. Now, 40 bits still sounds like a lot. It's about a trillion possibilities. But a single gaming computer can test billions of guesses per second. A trillion possibilities isn't a moat, it's a weekend. And here's the part that should make you angry. There was a safety check that was supposed to catch exactly this. The software library in charge of it tested whether the randomness setting existed, not whether it was switched on. That's the lifeguard checking that the pool has a gate, and never once checking whether the gate is latched. So the flaw sat there through version after version. For 5 years. I told my daughter the bug sat unnoticed in that firmware for 5 years. She looked at my garage fridge and said, "So it runs in the family." Now fast forward to July 30th this year. Somewhere in the world, a computer finishes grinding through those trillion possibilities and comes up with the keys. At 1:10 in the morning Universal Time, the sweep begins. Hundreds of wallets drained in a single window of about 25 minutes. And the fingerprints on it are chilling because there are none. Every transaction paid the exact same fee. Every transaction emptied the wallet to the last Satoshi. No change left behind, no hesitation, no mistakes. That is not a person stealing, that is a vending machine, spending keys it computed in advance. And understand what in advance means here because it's the most chilling part. The thief never touched a single victim's device. He didn't need to. He sat somewhere with a computer and rebuilt every key a flawed Coldcard could have created, walking through the serial numbers, walking through the clock readings, generating seed phrase after seed phrase, millions of them. Then he derived the addresses those seeds would produce and simply checked the public blockchain. Which of these addresses have money in them? Bitcoin's ledger is open. That's a feature. So he could see every target, every balance, every wallet that had sat untouched since 2021 and wait for the moment of his choosing. He built copies of their keys out of public information and watched the balances the way a hunter watches a game trail. The victims never had a chance to see him coming because from their side, nothing ever happened until 1:10 in the morning when everything happened at once. How did the thief find a 5-year-old flaw that the company itself missed? The company's own CEO said it out loud. Someone appears to have used AI to review old versions of their firmware. Think about that. Artificial intelligence. Walking a beach everyone else walked for 5 years with a metal detector nobody else had. And who paid for all this? Look at the victim profile, because it's you. Every drained wallet held at least 0.15 Bitcoin. Call it $9,000, $10,000 minimum. Many hadn't moved a coin since 2021. These weren't traders, these were savers. People who bought, secured it the way the experts said, and left it alone for their future. The ones who did everything right. And the thief skipped every wallet under 0.15 Bitcoin. A criminal with a minimum balance requirement. Somewhere, a bank executive is updating his resume. Here's where it gets worse, because the first number you heard is not the final number. After the initial sweep was tallied, 594 coins, $38 million. Forensics teams kept pulling the thread. They found hundreds more transactions with the same machine fingerprint. The potential total is now roughly 1,080 Bitcoin across more than 1,000 addresses, close to $70 million, and the company's emergency advisories are still going out as I record this. This story is not over. It is ongoing, right now. Now think about what was actually stolen from those 500 families. Not just the coins, the reason they held the coins. These are people who watched 2008, who watched banks get rescued with their money while their savings earned nothing. They walked away from that system on purpose. They took responsibility. They bought the most paranoid device on the market from one of the most respected companies in Bitcoin. And one line in a build recipe handed their savings to a vending machine at 1 in the morning. Here's the uncomfortable truth in one sentence. They fired their bank, and then they hired a vendor and never checked his work because they couldn't. The chip was a black box. The firmware was a promise. And a promise, it turns out, is just a man saying, "Trust me," in a lower voice. Now, some of you are already thinking it, so let's say it out loud. There's no fraud department to call, no chargeback, no FDIC sticker on the box. When a Bitcoin transaction confirms, it is final. That's not a bug, that is the entire point of the asset. The same finality that means no government can quietly claw back, freeze, or reissue what you hold. Finality is a sword with no handle side. It protects whoever holds the key. Hold the key yourself, generated by your own hands, and finality is your fortress. It's why no bank holiday, no bail-in, no Sunday night emergency order can touch your savings. Let a flawed chip make the key, and the same finality belongs to the man who guessed it. Nothing about this week changes the sword. This week is entirely about the hand on the handle, and whose hand your setup puts there. So the question this week actually asks is not, did self-custody fail? The question is, how do you hold Bitcoin without trusting any single man's work? Hold that question, because the answer exists, it's cheap, and zero of the wallets using it were touched. But first, you need to see what they're trying to sell you instead, because the sales pitch started before the coins stopped moving. By Friday, the financial press had its narrative loaded. One major outlet ran it almost word for word. This exploit shakes faith in self-custody and may push investors toward the ETFs. You'll hear it everywhere this month. Custody is hard. Leave it to the professionals. Buy the fund. Sleep at night. Now here's what that pitch leaves out. The overwhelming majority of America's spot Bitcoin ETFs, including the giant one run by BlackRock, the largest asset manager on Earth, keep their coins with a single custodian. one company, Coinbase, one security stack, one set of software you cannot inspect. You couldn't audit Coldcard's build recipe, and you can't audit theirs either. The difference is scale. The Coldcard flaw exposed a few thousand coins. That one custodian holds hundreds of thousands, the retirement savings of millions of Americans stacked behind one door. And what do you actually own when you buy the fund? Not Bitcoin. You own a share, a line on a broker's statement, which points to a fund, which points to a custodian, which holds coins in a vault you will never see, under firmware you will never check. It's an IOU wrapped around an IOU. Your name isn't on a single coin. Try this thought experiment. Call your broker tomorrow and say, "I'd like to take delivery of my Bitcoin, please. Send my coins to my own wallet." The answer is no. Not, "There's a form for that." No. Your shares redeem for dollars. Because the machinery for handing actual coins to actual people doesn't exist for you. It exists for Wall Street trading desks. And now run the ugly scenario. Suppose that one custodian ever has its July 30th. What does your claim become? A line in a legal process. Insurance policies with caps. Lawyers, filings, years. You'd stand in a line behind institutions whose lawyers are better than yours, waiting to learn what fraction comes back. Compare that to the multisig holder whose vendor fails. He walks to his desk drawer, uses his other two keys, and moves his coins the same afternoon. One of these is property. The other is a promise with a ticker symbol. Now widen the lens, because this is bigger than one fund. This is the pattern for everything they are building right now. They are tokenizing the whole world. Your stocks, your bonds, the deed to your house, putting every asset you own on digital rails. And every single one of those wrappers has an owner. The token has an issuer. The fund has a custodian. The stablecoin has a company that can freeze it. The dollar has a printer. Every exit they sell you has a landlord standing in it. So look at what they're offering the victims of this hack. You trusted one vendor's code and it cost you. So come trust our vendor's code at 100,000 times the scale, and this time you won't even hold the keys. That's not a fix. That's the same weakness with a suit on. And here's the number that gives the whole game away. The one stat from this entire disaster that nobody's putting in a headline. The number of multi-signature wallets drained on July 30th was 0. Not few, 0. The fix was never trust a bigger company. The fix was always stop trusting any single one. Which brings us to the door out and to those $3 I promised you. Step back and notice something about July 30th that nobody said out loud. While $38 million moved in 25 minutes, Bitcoin itself, the protocol, never flinched. The blocks kept arriving, one every 10 minutes, straight through the theft. The ledger never recorded a single false entry. Every stolen coin moved with a mathematically valid key, which is precisely why the flaw was in the key making, not the money. And the supply never budged. 21 million. Fixed. Forever. No emergency meeting, no bailout, no man deciding anything, because there is no man. No servers. Only a protocol. The failure lived at the edge, in one vendor's tool for holding a key. And here is what makes Bitcoin different from every other asset you have ever owned. The edge is yours. You can harden it yourself at your kitchen table and verify every step. Which brings us to the survivors. Remember them? The postmortem lists exactly who was untouched. Wallets set up with multi-signature. Wallets protected by a passphrase. And wallets whose seed phrase was generated with dice. Dice. That's the $3. Here's how it works, and why it's beautiful. Instead of trusting the device's chip to pick your random number, you roll dice. 50 plus rolls. And the device just does the arithmetic on your randomness. The chip can be blind, buggy, or backdoored, and it doesn't matter, because the randomness came from your own two hands. From physics, at your kitchen table. No vendor on earth stood between you and your key. And every wallet made that way sailed through July 30th untouched. Think about what that means. Bitcoin is the only asset on the planet where you can create your claim to it with a pair of dice and audit the math yourself. Try that with a bond. Try that with the deed to your house. There's a registry, an issuer, a transfer agent, a man in every one of those chains. Here, there's a protocol and dice. When I set up my own wallet years ago, I sat at the kitchen table rolling dice for 20 minutes, writing every roll down. My wife walked by and asked what game I was playing. I told her it was the most important game of my life. She looked at my score pad and said, "Well, you're losing." By the way, that Bitcoin price I gave you at the top, it's live on my macro command center right now, per coin, straight from the market, not a delayed fund quote. And for larger savings, there's the second survivor, multi-signature. Instead of one key, your Bitcoin requires two keys out of three to move, like a safe deposit arrangement where no single key opens anything. And here's the discipline that this week just turned into hard proof. Put those keys on devices from two different makers. Because when the next Coldcard style flaw ships, and there will be a next one, 5 years of hidden bug says the probability isn't zero. It will ship in one company's product. One flawed key out of three moves nothing. No single company's mistake can reach your coins. By construction. Lose a device? It's an errand, not an emergency. The other two keys move the coins to a fresh setup, while the lost one is just a paperweight. Two keys out of three before anything moves. I asked my wife why we don't run the whole house that way. She said we already do, and she's holding two of the keys. One more thing the wrapper can never give you. A man moved his savings across a border last month. No armored truck, no vault transfer, no declaration form. 12 words, held in memory, worth the same on both sides of the line. Within minutes of arriving, he could turn a piece of it into local currency and walk away. Your house can't do that. Your bond fund can't do that. Gold does it only if you enjoy conversations with customs officers. The asset with no issuer is also the asset with no borders, and no one to ask permission of. That's what was actually attacked this week, and what survived. Not Bitcoin. Bitcoin didn't blink. What failed was a shortcut, the habit of letting one company stand between you and your own property. Remove the shortcut, and what's left is the only asset in history where your claim rests on math you can check yourself. So what do you actually do? There are no certainties here, only probabilities. But this week handed us the probabilities on a plate. The probability that any single vendor eventually ships a serious bug, this week says treat it as real. The probability that the custodian holding half the country's Bitcoin ETFs is perfect forever, you can price that one yourself. If you hold coins on that brand of device, the maker has emergency updates out. Update the firmware, generate a fresh seed on the patch device, and move your coins to it, after a small test send. Never the whole stack first. And one warning, because it's already starting. After every wallet scare comes the second wave, the phishing wave. Emails that look like the manufacturer. Urgent security update, verify your recovery phrase. Websites with the logo, the fonts, the works. So burn this rule in. Your 12 or 24 words never touch a keyboard, a website, a text message, or a phone camera. Ever. No legitimate update from any company will ever ask for your words. The men who lost coins on July 30th were beaten by a supercomputer grinding a flawed chip. The next round of victims will be beaten by an email. And that attack, unlike this one, only works if you hand over the key yourself. If you're setting up fresh, let the dice pick your number. Or add a passphrase. That 25th word means even a stolen seed phrase opens an empty room. And once your Bitcoin is worth more than your truck, graduate to 2 of 3 multi-signature across 2 different makers. None of this requires trusting me. That's the point. It requires trusting arithmetic and your own hands. And if your Bitcoin lives inside an ETF, I'm not going to tell you to sell it. That's your decision, not mine. I'll just tell you what you own: a claim on a fund, on a custodian, on one company's locked door. This week showed you what happens to single doors. The exit exists. It has always existed. It's 21 million coins, no issuer, no unlock schedule, no intervention desk, and a claim you can mint with dice at your kitchen table. Free. No credit card. 2 minutes. timtalksfinance.com/members. You'll get the same live Bitcoin price I use, per coin, real time, on the same screen where I watch every number in this story, plus the 2-minute money quiz that shows what inflation is quietly costing your cash, in dollars per year. I built it so you don't have to figure this out alone. 500 savers did everything they were told, and a chip they never met spent their future in 25 minutes. The men selling you the fund are asking you to trust a bigger chip. The protocol never asked for your trust at all. Wherever the truth lands, and this week it landed on a kitchen table next to a pair of dice, it keeps landing on Bitcoin. I'll see you in the next one.